Institutions. Institutions are everywhere, not just large government bureaucracies, but anywhere humans gather into groups and establish common rules and regulations. Institutions exist even where they are not called as such. Unwritten rules and social norms are also an institution if you want to look at it like that. From large governments, organised religions, all the way down to local scouts, a gang of kids, or even a mothers' club meeting. Institutions are everywhere where we have regular human interactions. Familiarity may breed contempt, as they say, but it also builds institutions of every creed and colour. So what is it about institutions? What is it that makes them rigid, often archaic, and more often than not hostile to change? As stated above, it is regularity, familiarity, and consistency which leads to institutions in the first place. So it should not be a surprise that flexibility and change is not valued by those wanting to uphold them and those deriving influence and power from them. The reason we all tolerate institutions is that we need rules. Human interaction would be impossible without them. Every new interaction would be a minefield of miscommunication and require considerable effort and tolerance. Regulating interactions allows for redundancies and allows people to get on with what they actually want to do. At least this is the idea. Culture is the largest institution we have, and this includes languages. Oh yes, languages are also an institution. They regulate behaviour and interactions. Any deviation from the expected norm is not viewed kindly and often aggressively opposed. Why? Because miscommunication and unexpected reactions are stressful, a strain, and otherwise bothersome, and the truth is most people are too lazy to be bothered to make an effort. The whole point of adhering to an institution like culture is that it is supposed to ease communication and interaction. No wonder the natural reaction is to view other cultures with skepticism, even before evaluating any part of these cultures without any bias. Institutions are born from the need for rules, but gain power by the need to regulate them. Here we are not talking about police enforcement, licenses, certification, even mundane paperwork, and social stigma / social pressure are all a form of enforcement. You follow their procedures and rules, or you don't get access to their services. This is also known under the term bureaucracy. The service an institution provides is normally nothing more than some form of delegation of authority and rights. Be it an educational certificate, a working license, access to knowledge, or a social circle, all these things. Sounds simple enough. But where there is power, there is abuse, and as stated before, institutions gain power by increasing their bureaucracy. They must gain authority and exclusive rights over whatever service they are supposedly providing. The most common way to do this is to establish yourself as a master of this service, because become the authority in your field, be it government, education, moral, and claim only you can understand this area enough to be entrusted to wield the power of distributing the authority and the rights. This works because normal people don't have time to think about every little detail in the vastly specialized world that the civilization has allowed us. We are glad that the institutions exist to streamline the many interactions that we are forced to make. So how do institutions keep getting more power, i.e. bureaucracy? By adding more complexity. Institutions must sell themselves as being worth the burden to the people. No one likes to be told what to do after all. Otherwise people will quite simply not follow it. You can try hard power or force, as was historically been the norm, but nowadays it's easier to simply perplex the masses into thinking they can't do without the institutions themselves. It is much easier to hide a lie in a partial truth, after all. Pretty much every institution loves to make all kinds of connections between barely related events and claim that these are indeed connected like cause and effect, when in fact it is correlation that is being observed, not a causation. Not only that, but they then go on to claim that only they can see through this self-created complexity of interconnections and promptly create a bureaucracy to serve the public by guiding them through this self-fulfilling ideological quagmire. At best, at the head of these institutions sits people who know it is mostly a bunch of generalizations, simple arbitrary decisions, and even guesses at its core, instead of solid black and white facts and universal truths which they would have you believe. And they can adjust the bureaucracy as needed to ensure that the results of this system spits out does not deviate too much from a half-desirable outcome for themselves, or, if they are altruistically minded, the population. At worst, and frighteningly common, is that institutions' bureaucratic structure has gone over into the realm of tradition, and the new leaders actually believe their supposedly factual connections as dogma, often because they don't really understand the subject matter in the first place enough to make up their own mind about the processes. But heck, it's tradition! Someone old thought of it. It must be true. Now, not knowing the reason behind things can make you feel like you have no control. No surprise then that people would rather make up reasons or blindly believe so as to at least have the illusion of control than just be a victim of something which is supposedly out of their control. People create these institutions and even invest heavily in maintaining them rather than face the truth. They don't know, and therefore can seemingly not control what is happening to them. Now, many may think I am talking about religions here, but in truth I am talking about any institution that claims to be an authority in a field of humanities, and historically also the sciences, but less so nowadays. Well, mostly. Many a natural scientist also falls victim to the delusion of a hypothesis as fact, or that very specific experiments under controlled conditions are transposable into more complex systems. Quick, doctor, grab a leech. We must blood-let some more. So which institution is currently the greatest victim of believing their own self-created complex system of connections nowadays? Fictional causality, so to say. Get ready, it is economists. Not much of a surprise for most people, I suspect. Here is an institution which has convinced themselves that mathematical formulas and parameters can hope to explain something that at its core is human interaction. At its most basic unit, you have a buyer and a seller, both with very human and endless varied motivations, and the market economy is the sum total of all these individual actions. Is anyone surprised that markets, i.e. economics, actions are so difficult to interpret, let alone predict? Even the modern field of natural sciences, those that pride themselves on facts, isolating events and performing tests, are limited to very specific reproducible instances or generalizations. At least many of them know this, though the field of psychology and its partners in the drug industry would put a doubt to this. The point here is not that we can never understand, or that it is not worth trying to understand complex systems, but that you need to be able to tell when your attempts at control are producing worse results than if you had left it the heck alone. Take a step back, let the complex system adjust itself, and perhaps observe it a little over time before applying a light external influence in isolated circumstances. If this controlled interaction starts to produce unfavorable results, how about stopping and rethinking? The nice thing, and something many forget, is that every complex system, be it economics, psychology, or otherwise, has a natural inbuilt self-regulatory function. Why? Well, most complex systems are all human in nature, and humans, on the aggregate, want to improve their lives, and through this the lives of those around them, even if this is haphazard at times. So, some points to take away. Human interaction and motivation is the most complex system there is, even on a small scale, let alone a large population. Institutions exist by offering control as a service to the population. To thrive, they need a large bureaucracy to exercise control and make themselves indispensable by monopolizing ideas or control. Bureaucracies don't work well under generalizations and correlations. They much prefer causality and black and white rules, mostly because it requires less intelligence to implement. Thus the thinkers of the institutions spend their time looking for the causality in correlations, and many are not above settling for tenuous links and then sit back and claim that others are just not smart enough to understand the reasons behind this brilliant discovery. If you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough, as far as I'm concerned. Institutions will have a tendency to fall into a trap of believing their own discovered causality, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Pride comes before the fall, after all. Always seek advice about institutions from outside of institutions themselves if you want a clear understanding of the subject matter behind the bureaucracy. Humans will support institutions as a rule as long as the institutions seem to add to their perception of being able to control their environment or their lives. An institution that does not offer this will soon fall out of favour. Well, I hope that was interesting and informative. Let me know if there is any other topic you would like me to cover. It might bring it up in the order of priorities of the videos that I produce. Well, have a good evening or good morning, as the case may be, and all the best.